I know that we as fans like to say that it's inevitable, but I don't know that it is. I think you need to have some kind of understanding that history has proven it's entirely possible to be this good and not accomplish anything that really, truly matters. The Titans, they might be slightly more depressing because they've been to 5 AFC title games in their franchise's history and had one singular victory and then went on to lose that Super Bowl in, like, do you remember that?
Kevin Dyson.
How close was he to that end zone? It couldn't have happened to a nicer group of people. I'm happy about it, and I'll see Jeff Wycheck in hell. To another edition of the Rockpile Report podcast. I'm your host, Bill Season Ticket Holder Drew Gear. That's my producer, Chris Kruger. And this is the doldrums, man. We're in it. This sucks. There are no more North American sports that matter being played. And for
minor league baseball.
Baseball is one of the more unwatchable sports for me. If I'm at a game, that's fine because you're out. Generally speaking, it's a ballpark. It's a nice evening. You're probably hanging out with some friends. You've probably had a few beers. You know, it's a good time to be at a ball game.
See, here's the thing. If you're going to a baseball game, I can argue minor league game is better than a pro game strictly on that minor league teams will have the craziest promotion nights.
Yeah, you know what?
They have bring a dog to the stadium.
I will
They have,
give you that.
like, are you single night? So if you're single, go to a baseball game and meet men and women. They'll have Star Wars night, Jurassic Park night. I think, didn't the Bisons do, like, 2 years ago? I think they did Seinfeld night, where they had, they didn't have, like, Jerry Seinfeld there. I mean this is the minor leagues. I think they probably had, like, Newman there and Putty. But I believe that they had that. Somebody can fact check me.
So, you're not wrong. I appreciate the hell out of a Bison's game on a nice night, especially when it was like the other night. Who was here? Max Scherzer.
Oh, yeah.
Max Scherzer. It's like I remember when that guy was an ace, and now he's just old and injured and crazy enough that they stuck him in the triple.
Yeah, he's got to get rehab starts.
So, like, that goes back to, I watched a film in 2014, The Battered Bastards of Baseball. Great. Like, I saw it, I believe it was on Netflix, and it was a great doc about, like, hey, we've got this podunk baseball team and we don't know how to get people to come out, but we're going to run every gimmick under the sun until we figure it out. And they just found a way to make it interesting. And it was a cool thing to watch. Major League Baseball, on the other hand, is so, like, everyone's so talented, it's almost boring. Because it's too perfect. There aren't many mistakes. And then at the same time, to try to watch that on TV the way you watch a sport like football or hockey, you can't do it. You can't sit on the couch and watch 3.5 uninterrupted hours of baseball. I defy you. I think I would need a pillow to scream into. Like, do you have an Always Sunny when it's Mac's birthday?
Yeah, I could see that happening.
So, with that said, there's nothing to do. There's really nothing of, like, sports note going on. And, you know, it's funny. I think Bruce Nolan, actually, like, talking to him, he's like, he was telling me he led into his show this week with a conversation about, like, this is the time of year when you have to kind of let things come to you, or you got to try to create something from nothing. This week you came up with an idea, and I was like, you know what? Screw it. Never done this before. We'll spin the barrel on it and see what happens. We'll spin the chambers and see what happens. See, guys, I've never tried to do one of these, mostly because I think some of them are dumb, and I think they're not as nuanced as you think they are. And I'll say that trying to put together my own, it wasn't easy, but it also wasn't hard. And I also tried, but then in my head, Chris, is always this thought of, you're going to do a top 10 players for the 2025 season list? Like, okay, hack. And it's like, all right, at least this isn't the candy bar draft. Like, at least we're not here out here ranking Seinfeld episodes. Like, we're trying, right?
Yeah, we could talk about Paterka getting traded and Kevin Adams. I guess I would say getting fleeced.
I literally woke my wife up to tell her that the trade happened. She got all riled up. I was like, well, my work here's done. And I went back to bed. Left her to deal with that alone. Guys, we're here tonight talking about the top 10 players that I think maybe bear the most impact for the 2025 Buffalo Bills. You know, I had a training camp.
That isn't Josh Allen? Because he's clearly won.
Well, we'll see. It's my list. I can do whatever the hell I want. I think that this team has reached a real, watershed moment in its existence. You know, we have an MVP quarterback. We have a regime that has had what amounts to unprecedented success when you think about the Buffalo Bills. And I think it's important to put that in the context of this is a team that went to 4 straight Super Bowls. The recent run of success that the Buffalo Bills have had since the hiring of Sean McDermott, Brandon Beane, and Josh Allen, putting them all together, I think it gives the 90s Bills a run for their money. I mean, 5 consecutive division titles, 5 consecutive wild card victories, 2 AFC championship game appearances, no Super Bowls to show for it. Now, 4 straight Super Bowls is a hell of a thing. It's hard to do. That's why no one's done it since. With that said, this run, how many other franchises can say that they've been this successful over that time span?
Not a lot. Patriots. They were 20 years.
The Kansas City Chiefs?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's 2. How many other teams? The San Francisco 49ers? They had a window where they, Joe Montana, then they had Steve Young. Steve Young had a couple really hot years there.
Yeah, I'd put the 90s, I say 90s, use quotes. I put that in the terms of 88 to probably 95 was the peak years. Because they did have that, they had that run to the AFC title game and lost to Cincinnati. And I think 88, 89 was the bickering Bills. And I think 90, Ted Marchibroda said, or Marv Levy said to Marchibroda, hey, we should do our 2-minute offense to start the game. And then we went 13-3.
It is funny how that happens. And so as I was kind of thinking about this, I'm sitting on the couch after Chris pitched it to me, 2 days ago?
Yesterday.
So I'm sitting there and I'm like, on the couch with the whiskey, and I started thinking about this concept. And then I started thinking about how much success we've had recently without a Super Bowl win. I go, it's crazy that in the last 5 years, we've been to 2 AFC title games and have no Super Bowl appearances. So you start going down the list of other teams, other teams that had windows of success that never sealed the deal, never went on to see a Super Bowl. I know that we as fans like to say that it's inevitable, but I don't know that it is. I think you need to have some kind of understanding that history has proven it's entirely possible to be this good and not accomplish anything that really, truly matters. Look at the Jets. They won Super Bowl III. Okay? Broadway Joe. Woo! This the loans, a lot like the Dolphins. The one Super Bowl that a bunch of greasebags in New Jersey are still hanging on to, even though their grandfather was a child when it happened.
Yes.
Or my dad was a child. You weren't even in thought. Then guess what? You don't get to claim that Super Bowl. I'm sorry. That's just not how that works in my mind. They never won an AFC championship, Chris. Because the AFL-NFL merger didn't happen until the following year. The Jets won their Super Bowl in 1969. 1970 is when the NFL was formed and the AFC was born. So there wasn't an AFC title game for the Jets to play in. They never, 1970, they've gone to 4 AFC championship games and have 0 victories in them. The Titans, they might be slightly more depressing because they've been to 5 AFC title games in their franchise's history and had 1 singular victory and then went on to lose that Super Bowl in, do you remember that?
Kevin Dyson.
How close was he to that end zone?
With half a yard.
With no time on the clock. It couldn't have happened to a nicer group of people. I'm happy about it, and I'll see Jeff Wycheck in hell. The Jaguars, 3 AFC title games.
Let that one slide.
No Super Bowl appearances. None, Chris. They crippled Jim Kelly. I'll see them in hell too. Cleveland's a team that's really easy to punch down on, and this one is the one that I think most closely got me thinking about the Buffalo Bills. They've somehow played 3 AFC title games in their franchise's history since the merger.
Against Denver.
86, 87, and 89, and every single time ran into the Denver Broncos, and every single time they lost. And Chris, it's funny when you look at that Browns team, like they were scoring 20-something points a game, which in the 80s was like, that's when that type of scoring was really starting to happen, right? Nobody was piling up an average of 20 points a game in 1985 or 1883.
No.
It was the swing of the late 80s, and they had Bernie Kosar at quarterback, and they were kind of at the forefront of that. It's not like they had they had very good players, but it wasn't like they had a star. The Bills had a Thurman Thomas, Hall of Famer, Hall of Fame quarterback, Hall of Fame wide receivers, Hall of Fame defensive players. The Browns were very good. They just weren't good enough to seal the deal. It didn't mean anything. All that success, the Bernie Kosar stuff, all the points, Chris, didn't matter. They kept running into the same team in the title game, and it all went for naught.
Yeah, it could have been coaching there, because I think their coach at the time was Schottenheimer, who should be brought up with another team in the late 90s that couldn't get over the hump.
Who's that?
San Diego Superchargers.
Oh my God, I forget that used to be their thing.
Yeah.
The Superchargers.
Yeah.
It's the Chargers were
Phillip
another
Rivers
team
who ran into Big Ben and Brady and Manning.
The Chargers, I remember the year the Chargers made the AFC title game against the Patriots, and Phillip Rivers had a knee injury. Or was it LaDainian Tomlinson had a knee injury and tried to play through it? And
don't know.
The team just came out flat, got steamrolled. I mean, same thing happened to the Steelers. It's just, you think about that, the Chargers might be another example. You were good, but in the years you were good, it didn't matter because you'd run into somebody else who
15-1.
So my point is, even when your team is as good as the Buffalo Bills are, even sustainably good for a long period of time, it doesn't automatically translate to you hoisting a Lombardi. You need guys to step up, and it has to happen in the right moments. Everyone has to peak at the right time. Like in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, when he's like, all right, I want you to throw that radio in the tub when the song peaks. You got to hit that exact moment. Otherwise, nothing happens. The Bills have built one of the NFL's deeper rosters. It's got a lot of upside. It's one of the reasons that every article, whether it's Sam Monson from PFF or who Sam Monson worked at PFF, right?
He is at PFF.
Okay, and
we don't know. We're not allowed to follow his career because he blocked us. That's my fault.
That's my fault. It's the concept that all of these guys who rank rosters this time of year because they're just bored out of their skulls, it's the conversation of, hey, the Bills have a top 5 roster in the NFL. Now, a lot of that's carried by Josh Allen. So you need other guys around him because we've proven that that's not enough. You need guys around him to step up. But at a baseline, our roster is good enough. We have more proven talent at a number of positions than most NFL teams, or at least that other teams wish they had. We've got upside and promise at a bunch of others. You don't become favored in every single game on your schedule for 17 weeks by accident. That's how people with no emotion tied to these things see the Buffalo Bills. So with that, though, there's a difference between being very good and being special, being Lombardi worthy. And so in that way, I think there's 10 players, as I was thinking about this, that I think are most important to achieving that for the 2025 Buffalo Bills. And yes, I will cheat throughout the course of this list because it's mine and I can do whatever the hell I want. I'm an adult. Number 10, Chris. I'm going to start with 2 people. One, I just gave him one caveat. It's the rookie defensive linemen, specifically TJ Sanders and Landon Jackson. When you look at the defensive line room for the Bills, Rousseau and Bosa are kind of your alpha players at the position. Yeah, one of them, hopefully going to be on a literal pitch count. Only see situational use to prevent injury. Rousseau is going to be your most reliable defensive end most weeks. I think that's safe to say in terms of his ability to play the run, his ability to be on the field during passing situations. his ability to be part of interesting sub packages where they move him around the line and maybe try to get him on interior linemen, or when they're deciding that they want to flood the field with a little more speed and put multiple defensive ends out there. They can do things like that with the additions of Michael Hesh and Larry Ogunjobi. They're going to have the ability to do things. When you look at the rest of the guys who flesh out the roster at that position, they're all known quantities, and I think have pretty much topped out in terms of what their contributions can be. I mean, for those of you watching on YouTube, there's going to be some graphical stuff Chris is going to do in post for me, but like, let's look at Ed Oliver. Okay, Ed Oliver's career statistics from 2019 to 2024, he's pretty much leveled off in terms of his production. You know, he had 11 sacks in 2023, and everyone said, this is the guy that I need. And he reduced right back down to 3 sacks the following season. And some of that boils down to not having a real one tech playing at a high level next to him, which is why it's kind of crazy the Bills didn't put more effort into drafting that type of player. It's almost like instead, Chris, they said, listen, we don't care we don't care how much we're paying Ed Oliver. We don't care. We don't need him to be the show. What I need is the ability to put Larry Ogunjobi and TJ Sanders and Ed Oliver and just rotate the hell out of them and wear these guys out on the offensive line from a pass rush defense perspective. And so when you think about it like that, Oliver's baseline, throwaway 2023, he pretty much falls between 3 and 6 sacks. That's it. That's all he's ever done over the course of his career. If you take out that one outlier season where he was playing next to the best Daquan Jones anybody'd ever seen. You take a look at defensive end, AJ Epinesa. He's steady. You know, he averages, let's 21 sacks or 20 sacks over the last 3 years. So he's averaging 6 and change a season. You know, he'll get you some pressures. He'll get you some quarterback hurries. Last year, his hurries and his quarterback pressures outside of sacks kind of fell off a cliff. And that's in part because he was playing more rundowns as they were trying to save Von Miller for the pass rush situations. That's like, if you're going to see more of, if the plan is, let's say nobody else steps up and makes AJ Epinesa a trade candidate when training camp's done, you're probably looking at more of the same. A guy who can probably get you 5 to 6 sacks. He'll probably get single-digit quarterback hurries. He'll probably get you 4 or 5 quarterback hits over the course of the year. He's nothing but a pure rotational player. And that's okay, but there's nothing in his career jacket now that says he can be anything more than that, right, Chris?
Yeah.
And then Michael Hesh. There's reason to be excited about a guy who's kind of a Swiss Army knife because he can play inside and outside, and he can drop into coverage a little bit because he's athletic.
We'll let that slide too.
Why?
Michael Hoyt.
Hoyt, Hesh, it doesn't matter. I keep thinking Jochen Hesh when I see it. That's why. And I won't stop doing it. Like, it's the first thing that pops in my head. For those of you who don't know, Jochen Hesh was a longtime forward for the Buffalo Sabres. And when I say long time, Chris, I think he wore 3 different jerseys with this team.
Maybe. I know he wore 2 different numbers.
Yeah. That's how long he was with the franchise. So when I see it spelled the exact same way, I'm sorry. I think Hesh, and I'm never going to stop saying that.
They're spelled differently, but
this is the guy who can't spell fucking Reinhardt, right? What do you want from me? You look at this guy, 5 sacks, 7 sacks, 5 sacks, no sacks his rookie year. Like, again, he very much projects statistically as an AJ Epinesa type, where he's a nice piece to have. He's never going to be anything you hang your head on in terms of, man, this is going to be a real, like, this isn't something an offensive coordinator is going to worry about when they make their game plan. It's something you're going to throw in, add a wrinkle to your defense using a guy with a variable skill set like that. So with that in mind, I take a look at these 2 rookies and I just say to myself, okay, the Bills' depth players aren't going to wow anybody. They're fine, but fine doesn't win you a Super Bowl. You got to be able to platoon for 4 quarters now. And you got to have high-end talent and find some guys who by December are playing above their pay grade. I think about the fact that AJ Epinesa's cap hit this year is very similar to Philadelphia's Josh Sweat, who last year, like, he had an okay season, but then absolutely turned it on in the playoffs. He has 2.5 sacks in the Super Bowl, finished the postseason with 5 tackles for loss, 8 quarterback hits, and 12 solo tackles. And he only counted $8 million in their cap for the season. That's a pretty good playoffs, right?
yes.
Somebody's going to have to step up and outplay their paycheck in order for this group, because I don't think there's any one guy outside of the names who are going to be anything close to special, quote unquote. But I look at these rookies and I say to myself, okay, Landon Jackson he projects to be what AJ Epinesa is. And who knows, maybe that's the thing that if he's good enough, maybe that makes AJ Epinesa replaceable or at least reduces his role. I mean, how many defensive ends can you keep on the roster at one time?
I don't know. What is the Brandon Beane's history? Is it
Why don't you pull up our
Isn't it
lads?
around 10?
Go to our lads and pull up October 2024.
All right.
Then I look at TJ Sanders, and everyone kept saying, oh, it's a redundant skill set. When he was drafted, some of the detractors of the move said, hey, it's a redundant skill set because we already have Ed Oliver, and you went out and signed Larry Ogunjobi in free agency. Why do you need this instead of a true one tech like an Alfred Collins? And the thing I'll say is I think they look at this as we need a 3-tech who's an actual upgrade. We need someone who comes in here because Dwayne Carter projected more as a 3-tech. And I go back to Vernon Butler, a player that Bean was a part of drafting in the first round when he was with the Panthers, who then unceremoniously joined the Bills after he kind of failed to be a Star Lotulelei type player for the Panthers. When Star Lotulelei himself kind of washed off the roster, they brought in Vernon Butler. And Vernon Butler was a guy who was supposed to be this big behemoth who had the athleticism to be a 3-tech penetrator. And they tried to force him to be a 1-tech just because of his size. Something tells me that Dwayne Carter could be in line for the same treatment, just based on how they've lined this up. All right, so you've got this in front of me. So on the 53-man roster in October, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 defensive ends and 4 defensive tackles. So if you know that you're going to have TJ Sanders, you're going to have Ed Oliver, you're going to have Larry Ogunjobi, you're going to have Daquan Jones, you're almost you have to keep a 5th defensive tackle just to get Dwayne Carter on the 53-man roster. I think that of that group, the one that I think might surprise you with a little untapped potential would have to be TJ Sanders then, right?
I mean, we traded up for him.
We know what he's bringing to the table. If he can outplay his rookie status, that's going to be found money. Same thing for Landon Jackson. I need him to come in and join this room, and him and a guy like Javon Solomon to push some of these older guys who, look, not for nothing, you keep 6. I know who 2 of the 6 are. Who are the other 4? I think that's going to be really interesting when the preseason rolls around. And just to see if anybody can push AJ Epinesa or at least prove that they deserve a spot in conjunction with whatever they're going to do. Do you see a world where they maybe keep 11 at that now that we're talking about this? Because that's hard, right? That's hard to do, to keep 11 defensive linemen.
I don't know. Well, I mean, it goes in line with the other side of the ball, too. We generally keep 10 offensive linemen. So, I mean, it's going to be a product of what Bean can do on when the 53 has to happen. If you got to cut Reed again to open up a spot for somebody so you can get the right amount of people on that initial 53.
Unfortunately, Reed's on a 4-year deal. That's not possible. We're actually going to talk about that in a minute. I move on to number 9, wide receiver Keon Coleman. Spoiler alert, guys, Dalton Kincaid does not appear on tonight's list. Do you want to know why, Chris?
I don't know. I figured he might be.
This moose head still hits. This hits like crack in the 80s. Woo!
I don't know why he wouldn't be on the list.
It's because I've spent weeks trying to think about who on offense could really give them a significant boost compared to what they had at the pass catcher position last year. And in terms of growth of skill set and overall impact that it provides, there's a lot of guys that really kind of fall short for me. Like Jordan Palmer. Jordan Palmer's a guy who's never had a standout season in his career. Solid run blocking wide receiver. He's fast. He's a good route runner. So who knows? But it's not like he was playing for a do-nothing offense. The Chargers' offense wasn't terrible the last few years. I mean, they had some real crippling lulls, but
Brandon Staley.
Yes, that's a problem. They lost. A lot of their failures came from just poor game management. Like, how many times did they just get like out coached in the final 5 minutes of a game to lose? It was embarrassing.
I can't get past him. I think was letting up 60 something to the Raiders. Was it?
Yeah, you have to fire that guy then.
Yeah.
But Elijah Moore's out there, decent multi-purpose wide receiver who's a good route runner. Could have maybe a John Brown-esque resurgence in this offense with this quarterback, but he's more likely kind of a throw-in than a primary contributor on a week-to-week basis. Curtis Samuel, okay, gadget player. It's a better version of what they wanted Isaiah McKenzie to be. Great. And he's more injury-prone, which is fantastic. Khalil Shakir, maybe the only proven commodity in terms of being a chain mover, but doesn't produce a lot of explosive plays down the field. And then you've got Dalton Kincaid, who's a tight end. And I'm not trying to slight Kincaid here, but ultimately there is a reason that I hate first-round tight ends. Hate it. I think it's one of the stupidest ideas. It's up there with the time that the Raiders drafted Janikowski. Like, it's on par with that level of stupidity. Who was Aguayo, the kicker, that Tampa Bay drafted in the 3rd round? I believe, if I'm not wrong, the Jacksonville Jaguars drafted Brian Anger, a punter, in the 3rd round.
The checks out.
Fact check me on that. I believe that's a thing that happened. There are bad ideas, and like those are the worst ideas. And then slightly below them is drafting, like, again, late 20s. It's close, but a tight end in the 1st round is just a hard sell for me. Because if you look at it, all the best tight ends, Chris, think who are the best tight ends in your lifetime that you've watched play?
Well, I was just going to say, I remember maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I tried roping Greg Thompson into a Seagram's bet because there was a tight end in the draft that I was told by all draft pundits that was going to change the league. Kyle Pitts for the Falcons. He was drafted like 6th overall. And I do not buy, like, the last, I was thinking about this for tonight because I didn't know if you were going to have Kincaid on the list. But, like, for me, Vernon Davis was the last tight end that I can remember that lived up close to his draft status. But, like, Brandon Pettigrew, I'm going to change the league. Kyle Pitts, I'm going to change the league. No, you're not.
Well, look at this. So it's easy. You go to drafthistory.com and they'll filter it. They'll allow you to filter it by position. In 2010, in the 1st round, Jermaine Gresham. You know, he was going to be great. Again,
I think he did a backflip into the end zone or a front flip.
In that same draft, Rob Gronkowski went in the 2nd round.
Yep.
Like, these are the conversations you end up having. You know, you take a look and you say, "Oh, look, Kyle Rudolph. He was a 2nd round pick, productive player, right?" Then you keep going up through history. Tyler Eifert was the 21st pick in 2013 in the 1st round. Zach Ertz goes in the 2nd round. Zach Ertz goes on to have a much better career than Tyler Eifert.
Kittle and Kelsey.
But it gets worse. Like, I look at, like, remember the Lions?
Yeah,
not that far apart. They took Brandon Pettigrew and Eric Ebron both in the top 10. Neither one of them did anything of note in the NFL. Hayden Hurst. The Baltimore Ravens frustrated the hell out of me because they took one in the 1st round. When that guy didn't pan out, they doubled down, and I believe it was the Hayden Hurst draft. In fact, I can just search it here. Hurst.
Well, the Ravens have always been known to have a couple of good tight ends, considering that Ozzie Newsome was their GM for a long time, famous tight end from the 80s. So they had Todd Heap.
In 2018, they spent the 25th overall pick on Hayden Hurst. And if you notice, Chris, as I'm talking about this, there's a theme of these tight ends getting drafted in around the 20s, because that's where everyone's like, all right, one tight end went super early or no tight end went yet, and I'm going to get the best one that I think is out there of the crop. Hayden Hurst, remember how we were talking about how jacked he looked? Like, big, muscular, did absolutely fuck all with his opportunities. Meanwhile, he loses his job to Mark Andrews, like a real Christian Benford, Kyrie Elam situation. Mark Andrews gets drafted in that same class, and Hayden Hurst never gets a sniff. It's this thing. Like, those players don't work out because it's hard for a tight end to really provide the requisite value being a first-round pick. Even if Kincaid comes out in 2025 and has a great season comparative to the rest of his statistics, I still feel like wide receiver growth and contribution, specifically that of Coleman, is more important to the offensive structure. It's just more versatile when you have a big physical wide receiver who you can move to the slot and still win versus having a tight end who can play outside but probably won't wow anybody with his production there and probably isn't giving opposing safeties down the field much to worry about. So in terms of how a defense reacts to your shifting or your alignment, you're less threatening in that regard. Like whenever you've seen him lined up out wide, Chris, Kincaid's catch numbers are pretty good, but the overall production is lacking. That's a problem for if you're a team that doesn't have a true boundary wide receiver. This is where you need a kid like Coleman to step up. Now, I talked about it today in our DMs with DJ Snyder from Bootleg Football. Kincaid probably legitimately right now a better route runner than Keon Coleman, but he only played 16% of his snaps lined up outside on the boundary. It's 90 snaps. Coleman had 722 snaps and 88% of them were out wide. And the rest were in the slot where he's still a better run blocker than Dalton Kincaid. To know that he gives you plus catching ability in the middle of the field and that he's a mismatch against smaller safeties and linebackers, that he's a better run blocker, and that he's can play the boundary and does so far more often. Like if I'm Joe Brady, I'm praying to God that Keon Coleman can just figure out some of the nuances of like stickier coverage at the NFL level. They talked about his success when he was lined up outside, largely coming against zone, and that when he was pressed or guys played physically against him, he really struggled to get separation. If he can become more reliable and learn the nuances of how to disengage from guys and how to get that separation, Chris, it gives Joe Brady a whole different playbook to work with.
Yeah.
Versus Dalton Kincaid just having a slightly better season. The next on my list at number 8 is Max Hairston. Now, this one's easy. Like, Hairston has to pan out here. And it's funny, I was just talking about offensive coordinators. Offensive coordinators are going to be licking their chops when it comes to the Buffalo Bills and Max Hairston. Chris, the average NFL team passes 33.7 times a game. When you're playing a team like Buffalo, you got to figure that average is probably a little bit larger because the Bills are putting scoreboard pressure on you. So you're not spending as much time just running the ball and expecting that to be enough to orchestrate your offense. Meanwhile, Christian Benford, our starting cornerback, is only averaging 3.6 targets per game.
It's impressive.
So you do the quick math and you figure out where the hell are the rest of those targets going? Well, for the last 2 seasons, if you're the Buffalo Bills, it wasn't cornerback 2. Because if you look at Rasul Douglas's target numbers, both mid-season being acquired via trade, and then also the season that he spent here after that, he averaged about 63 targets a game, 63 targets for the season. So what that tells you is the outside cornerbacks for the Buffalo Bills were not being targeted nearly as often as everybody else on the team. That dynamic changes when you don't have reliable or at least cornerback play on the other side of Christian Benford that teams are cognizant of. That they know, hey, I can't just try to steal on this kid. I have to play him honest. We have to go find another place to go, make our bones when it comes to attacking the Buffalo Bills defense. I think that he's going to be thrown at early and often in his career. If he wins the starting job, which, Chris, how much competition does he really have for it?
Not a lot. Trey White, don't really believe that being challenging him for that CB2 job.
I mean, the good news for the kid is that we've got really good defensive coaching and players around him that can kind of hide him if necessary. I mean, look how long this team got away with Levi Wallace and Dane Jackson. The case in point, right there. But for this team to be its best, right? Not just a playoff team, but a championship team, Hairston can't have an Elam-esque start to his career. He's got to come out. He's got to start quickly, and he's got to show opposing offensive coordinators that it's a bad idea to test that freakish speed that he has, or at least he has to prove that if you do have a speed threat, that's fine because he won't be open. Our guy in his zone can stick with him stride for stride and then hand him off to the appropriate safety or whoever else is covering in the zone system. On one hand, Chris, you'd say, oh, it's no pressure. He's a rookie. Like if he has a down year, it doesn't matter because he's got time to grow. But I feel like there's more pressure on him because of where we are in our competitive window and how important the role that he was selected for plays.
Well, what about like when we got Trey White to start when we drafted him? He got snaps right out the gate. We were using Trey White as CB1 right when we drafted him, right?
Sure.
This is, slightly different. We're asking Max to be CB2 immediately.
Well, not only CB2 immediately, but also I have to feel, as I grab a real American, I have to feel like there's a different level of pressure when it comes to being CB1 on a bad football team with no expectations.
To CB2 on a good team?
CB2 on a team that thinks it can go in a Super Bowl. I don't know. And maybe that's not fair, but I feel like that's probably correct, right?
Yeah.
So Max Hairston, that kid, again, if you're looking at the people who stand out, look at Cooper DeJean. They didn't know they were going to be able to get that kind of play out of him, and he played an integral role in the Eagles Super Bowl run. We're going to have to try to find something similar. Max Hairston has to be a playmaker for us if we're talking about making that kind of jump. Number 7, safety Cole Bishop. I picked Cole Bishop because when you look at that safety room, Chris, right now, Damar Hamlin, Mike Edwards, Taylor Rapp, Cole Bishop. That was last year's room. Mike Edwards never played a snap for the Buffalo Bills, but he was on the roster in October.
I forgot about that guy.
Of course everyone did. So did the coaching staff. They were just like, oh, Mike Edwards, who? What? That guy? He's still here? I'll cut him. He was like Milton, where he got like Sean McDermott probably thought they cut Mike Edwards. Like he thought he was already cut. And then one day someone brought it to his attention. He's like, hey, Mike Edwards' agent's on the phone. He wants to know why his player's not getting playing time. And McDermott's head swung around. He's like, who? I thought we fired that guy like 2 months ago. They're like, no, he's here. He's in the building right now. So with that said, if you want to go ahead and give me the current depth chart, Chris, if you can refresh that page and bring me back to just the current day Buffalo Bills roster. When you look at the safety room, the one thing that stands out to me, Taylor Rapp's still here. Damar Hamlin's still here. Cam Lewis is still here. And those 3 players were all on the roster when you drafted Cole Bishop. You didn't take him for no reason. You drafted this kid because you saw a growth plan and he was the most talented safety on the board left when you had the chance to get him. Now you've gone and drafted another safety. And you've got an interesting talent in Derek Forrest, who's very athletic and had some success in his short time as a starter. I feel like of everybody in that group, though, the one that could provide the biggest jump in terms of productivity has to be Cole Bishop. Damar Hamlin, if you have to roll him out there again as a starter, it's not gonna kill you. It won't be the end of the world. Taylor Rapp is a good safety. He's better than average. Cam Lewis is your quintessential, hey, I can do 5 things for you, so you want me on your team. I can play nickel corner. I can play safety for you. You need me on the roster some way, somehow. Cole Bishop is the one guy who's interesting as a starter, and if he can grab a hold of that free safety role and really hold it down well, athletically, he's a giant step up from what we've had in the past and what either Damar Hamlin or Taylor Rapp gives us. Of course, that alone makes him an important part of a secondary that's going to need a lot of help this year. Just when you look at the age of the group, you look at the relative newness of some of the key players, I think that that's really important to keep in mind. He, in conjunction with Hairston, are going to have big years if we're talking about the Bills being Super Bowl contenders. 6.5. This is my favorite one to put together. Number 6.5 is long snapper Reed Ferguson. Now, Reed is on this list for two reasons. One is that he's one half of the kicking operation, which I think is really important to the continued success of the Buffalo Bills. And his counterpart is who we'll be discussing in a moment. Also, though, I feel like considering he's now the longest tenured Bill left on the roster and just signed the second biggest long snapper contract in the league in terms of guaranteed money, you'd think he would be able to pay to get this photo removed from the internet. Chris, do you know that that's his photo in my phone?
No, I didn't know.
Whenever I get a text message from Reed, that's the picture that pops up. I showed it to his father once at one of his barbecue events for, like, you know how he throws the Grills Mafia veterans
at
events?
First Line Brewing.
At First Line Brewing. I saw his dad, and I thought, I was like, Kevin, you want to see something funny? I go, this is a picture that pops up every time your son calls me or texts me. And he had food in his mouth, and he almost choked on it. He goes, why? Who took that? Did you take that? I go, no, it's online. It exists on the internet. And his father was dumbfounded. He goes, how did Reed let this happen? If I was a multimillionaire, I would, Chris, how hard could it be? Right? Like, I want to pay some cash, get that picture removed from the internet.
Can't be that hard.
We love you, Reed. But he does have a significant role to play when you think about what he and Tyler Bass contribute in. Also, Reed is sort of integral to the cohesiveness of the special teams unit. You know, I'm thinking about their performance in one-score games, and my mind just wanders back to that Rams loss where they blocked one of our punts for a touchdown. That can't happen. That shit can't happen again. I challenge Reed, the former special teams captain, to come up with some kind of a solution for that. And at number 6, Tyler Bass. The Buffalo Bills played in 7 games that were decided by 3 points or fewer in 2024. And they were 4-3 in those games, which is almost 500. Tyler Bass was not his best self in a lot of those games where we struggled. And, you know, even the ones where that we won. Look, Chris, that we win against the Jets. He missed a PAT and a field goal in that game. If it's not for the Jets kicker having an absolute meltdown on national TV, we probably lose that football game. He hits a 61-yard game-winning field goal against Miami, but he did miss a point-after attempt. He had 5 games with at least one missed field goal, and he missed 5 point-after tries over the course of the season. Like, that's hard.
Yeah.
That's hard to swallow when you look at what he's making and realize he's got the 10th highest cap hit for kickers in the NFL. That's why, look, last year I was pounding the table. I'm like, there are guys making $1.5 million around the NFL who have better kicking statistics than Tyler Bass. Why are we dealing with this? But then you watch him hit that 61-yarder and you go, shit, he did that outside. You put him in a dome? Like, what was it, Prater? I think, who holds the longest? Is it Prater right now at like 62?
Might be Matt Prater. I'll give it a goog.
I think it was Matt Prater at 62 yards. Last season down the stretch, Tyler Bass figured it out. He was reliable as hell. His late...
Justin Tucker, 66 yards.
66, okay. I should have guessed. His late field goal against Baltimore and Justin Tucker, when the Bills had drives stall out because the Ravens kind of figured out our offensive approach coming out of halftime, and those halftime adjustments the Ravens made were killing us. Those late field goals are what sealed our trip to the AFC title game. In bad weather, that guy showed up and performed week after week after week down the stretch. That Tyler Bass has got to be the guy who shows up week 1 in Orchard Park. Not just because of what that type of performance does for you on the box score, and, you know, not leaving points on the table in terms of field goals, point afters, but also what it does for your offensive philosophy. The Bills had the second highest 4th down conversion rate in the NFL last year. 74.9%, almost 75. Better than Philly, better than everyone in the NFL. But they also had 22 attempts at it, which is right in the middle of the pack. And it puts them in the same conversation of teams like the Raiders and the Titans and the Patriots, who, if you go back to last year's box scores, were typically going for it on 4th down late in games just because they had to. Because the game was already getting out of hand, and they figured, why the hell not? it's great that you have a highlight reel machine at quarterback and that that guy can convert fourth downs with limited assistance from everybody around him. But sometimes the pressure to go for it, especially, Chris, when you're inside the 30 and you go, man, this is a 40-yard field goal in a game where maybe 3 points might be nice. Do I really want to go for it on 4th and 2? Do I really want to go for it on 4th and 3? The Bills were doing it. They were doing it early because I think there was a lack of trust in, hey, can I put Tyler Bass out here, not only steal momentum away from my team, but also potentially give them the ball in more advantageous territory. I'm too close to the end zone to punt. I might as well go for it on 4th down. And that kind of became some of the Bills' ethos was we have to do this. The more consistent Tyler Bass is, the less the Bills will be forced to go for it on 4th down in those positions where, like we saw in that Monday Night Football game where we lost to the Titans because Josh just was going for the tush push and just slipped and fell before the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
Like there's randomness in football, whether you like it or not. And that can happen at any point in time. So for as great as Josh is, I'd rather take 3 points than on 4th and 2, hope something stupid doesn't happen and Josh Allen trips over his own feet like Rex Grossman and all of a sudden it's a turnover on downs. I need that from Tyler Bass this year. And if he can really hone that in and be more of the guy who was clutch in the playoffs, great down the stretch when the weather was terrible, be the guy who can hit a 61-yarder on a clear sunny day in Buffalo, New York, that'll go a long way towards. And you know what else it does, Chris, philosophically? The same way I'm saying it takes pressure off the Bills offense, it puts pressure on your opponents because when somebody watches Tyler Bass line up from 60 and just bang one in, you now know that you have to push. You have to score more points because you know that if it comes down to it and you leave us a minute and 15 on the clock and we've got a guy like that on our side for a game-winning kick, you don't feel good about your chances. So it puts more pressure on opposing teams, which is never a bad thing. Number 5 on my list, Khalil Shakir. The offensive ethos, it's on hats, it's on t-shirts, it's fucking everywhere. Everybody eats, Chris. Everybody eats. And it's not going to go away anytime soon. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I don't think there's anything wrong with having a really great offense that doesn't have to rely on one diva wide receiver. I shouldn't say diva. I should call them stars, right, Chris?
Correct.
Is that the politically correct term?
Yes.
Not having to funnel 130 targets to one guy does give you some advantages as a play caller. It frees up your offense to show a lot of different things and give the defense less to bite on. And it renders a lot of film study by defenses, especially early in the season, it renders a lot of it moot. Because you're allowed to throw out different formations and they go, I know for a fact Josh is going to target each one of these guys 5 times today. It's just whack-a-mole. Okay, which one is it? And you got to hope you're right. And what kind of feeds that is that, like last year when they came up with this, it was because we had a talent group at the skill position, the pass catchers, that just kind of all had the same thing going for them that the defensive line does. A decent baseline of talent, but no singular talent that you'd call special. But if there's anybody at the everybody eats table that needs seconds, I think it's Khalil Shakir. I mean, when you look at these third down statistics that I'm cribbing from Anthony Prohaska from over at Cover One, he tweeted this out over this, back in early June. Khalil Shakir on third down in 2024. He tied for first in yards per route run, first in the NFL in yards per target, fourth in receiving EPA, that's expected points average, added, fourth in EPA per target, and ninth in positive play rate. And that's amongst 84 qualifying wide receivers, running backs, and tight ends. So it's not just, out of all wide receivers. It's literally anybody on the field who's qualified to catch a football. Khalil Shakir was one of the best players in the entire league on third down. He was Cole Beasley on 2019 Cole Beasley on steroids. And a lot of it's because he's just more singularly talented in terms of his physicality and his body control and his ability to extend with yards after contact. I mean, he finished at the top of the league in yards after contact, and that's typically a running back statistic. with that said, for all the great stuff that he does, all the plays, Chris, where you saw it, he led the team in first down catches far and away because you could throw it to him, if it's 3rd and 4, you can throw it to him at the 2nd yard and you 2 yards downfield, and he's going to get maybe 5 more because nobody can ever bring him down at first brush. His body control and his contact balance are so good that at first blow, and he's small and he's got enough agility that it's hard to ever, nobody, Chris, how many times did you ever see him just get straight up tackled head on?
Not often.
Not often. It's usually from the side or behind. He's being drag tackled. That's because he's so shifty. And when you do make contact with him, he falls forward. He bounces off of you and continues going. That's a very special talent. And the Bills were smart to retain that kind of a thing. The problem is that for all the great stuff that he does, he finished with just 4 touchdowns. Just 4. And if you look at his 20 or yards, catches of 20 more yards, he finished tied for 54th in the league with just 9. Keon Coleman did not have a crazy rookie season, and he had 12 plays of 20 or more yards. So with everything that's special about Shakir, the Bills have to find a way to get more out of his presence and his abilities. And I don't think that this is a Khalil Shakir problem. I think this is Joe Brady having to figure out, okay, Khalil Shakir is special. He might be the only special pass catcher I have. How do I maximize the output that I get from that? Because I'll tell you right now, having him lead your team in first downs and only scoring 4 touchdowns, that's not Chris, that's not going to power your offense when you're playing with as little star power as we are, is it?
Yeah.
Now, maybe the growth of Keon Coleman plays into them being able to do more things and free up Khalil Shakir with other people drawing certain coverages or how they can deploy Shakir. But ultimately, I mean, you think about how great this guy was when desperation time kicks in. You remember that touchdown against the Chiefs in the playoffs here in Buffalo? It's a ridiculous highlight reel touchdown where Josh Allen almost is throwing a 3-quarter delivery. He lets the ball go into a window that I don't even know how Allen saw it or trusted that he was going to be open. And Shakir makes a catch that's just grip strength and body control for a touchdown. As he's falling and tucking his body away, he catches that ball, maintains it. It's trust, body control, and grip strength. Those things are special. If you can find a way to take him from chain mover and make him the type of presence that you as a defensive coordinator have no choice but to scheme for week in and week out, because we're going to do other ancillary things with guys like Samuel, guys like Kincaid to get Shakir open for big plays, it could go a long way towards making him the most explosive part of this entire offense from a pass catching perspective. I think it's there. They just have to find a way to get to it. Number 4 is Christian Benford, Chris. He got paid like a true CB1. Now I need him to live up to that. I'm honestly not that worried about it. I just think that we're going to need a little bit more for him, given what's going on with the rest of the cornerback room, like we just discussed when we were talking about Max Hairston. I want to outline for you just how good Benford has been in coverage, just in terms of pure coverage. In 2024, he saw the second fewest targets out of any cornerback who was graded in the top 10 for coverage grade. Pat Surtain was number 1 with 55. Christian Benford was 62. For comparison, Trent McDuffie finished with 102 targets and a similar catch percentage as Christian Benford. There's going to be a rookie starting across from Benford. And overall, the cornerback group has some question marks once you start going down the depth chart. That's going to be an interesting thing to watch when training camp rolls around. I mean, is Trey White done? Dane Jackson, do the rookies that they brought in make him look old? I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see if those guys even flirt with the roster. Does Brandon Codrington push for the kick returner job and in that way put himself into that defensive back conversation? I mean, Daquan Hardy, who was a 6th round pick, he had speed and kick return ability, but he got hurt and just wasn't very effective. Who knows? Do they give him an opportunity to battle with Codrington for kick returns? Is it Chenault, Codrington, and Hardy? And the winner is going to be decided not even really by like who steals the job, but where else they can squirrel away bodies. You know, if they feel like they need another wide receiver, maybe Chenault makes the roster and Codrington's out. Maybe they like Codrington's return ability so much that they find a way to keep him in there as a cornerback, knowing full well he's probably not going to see any defensive snaps. It's tough. But I think for all of this to work, there's got to be some stability at the top. We have to know that we have one of the best cornerbacks in the league in Christian Benford. And so he's going to have to at least maintain status quo. If he doesn't, this cornerback room looks very different. If I told you that he was going to have a subpar year, Chris, you look at that depth chart right now, what makes you feel good about our cornerback room if Christian Benford's not good?
If that's the case, Maxwell Harrison has to be an absolute hit.
And what if he's not? Then this whole thing for outside cornerbacks gets kind of fucked, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It looks real bad, real fast. So we need him. Number 3, Joey Bosa. The Bills were at their best in terms of pressure rate and overall just intimidation of other teams when they had an in his prime Von Miller. In the wake of his injury in Detroit, they dropped from the 6th best pressure rate in the NFL down to 19th by the end of the season. They were 10th best in sack percentage per drop back. They fell to 20th in the NFL by the end of the year. Now, there were some mitigating things out there that still helped us be a very good football team. The run defense actually got better with less Von Miller, and there was more focus on defensive back spacing and usage instead of trying to rely on just pure pass rush. And QBR actually went down over the course of the year from 51.3 to 35.4 against the Bills over the course of those few weeks. Some of that could also do with our schedule, though, right? Like if you just play some shitty quarterbacks and it drops that aggregate, then that's not really something you can point at and go, see, we didn't need Von Miller. But the Bills have been trying to rely on that for too long, and it's clear that when it really matters in the playoffs, Chris, you need a closer. Look at what the Chiefs have been getting out of Chris Jones. Key plays when it matters. You look at everybody else, Trey Hendrickson. I go back to Trey Hendrickson making that play at the goal line in the wild card round against Baltimore. I think it was 2022, where for some reason they didn't hand the ball to J.K. Dobbins, and Anthony Brown tries to sneak it in, and Trey Hendrickson punches the ball out, gets a strip sack, and one of their other is it Asai picks it up and runs it in for a touchdown. I don't know. I just remember it was like a 99-yard fumble return for a touchdown, and it ended the game. The Eagles dominate the Chiefs they didn't blitz. They didn't blitz, and they just beat the hell out of the Chiefs in the trenches because they needed star players. Josh Sweat and Jalen Carter combined for 6 pressures and 2.5 sacks. That's nuts. Joey Bosa's value isn't that of a player that I need to see on the field much. I don't care. Chris, I wish they had suspended him. Is there time now for us to go commit a crime and frame Joey Bosa so that he's suspended for the first 8 weeks of the season?
It's possible.
We have to call our lawyer about that one. You're hoping that when the playoffs roll around, he's healthy and he can deliver moments like that. I mean, he's got a big hill to climb when you look at what he's played. I mean, 14 games in 2024, but 9 before that, 5 the season before that. But in 2024, he was a Pro Bowl alternate. And he, outside of those 2 injury-shortened seasons, he's been a Pro Bowler or a Pro Bowl alternate every single year. So it's possible that even if he's not quite elite anymore, he's definitely upper echelon. And that puts him, Chris, like when we talk about guys who need to elevate and become stars for us to go grab that Lombardi, Joey Bosa is the type of player. Like, I need that guy available when the postseason rolls around playing his best football. Without him, Chris, again, you're left with a bunch of high-end Jags.
Yeah.
I don't know. If he can and does make it to the Bills playoffs, I expect he could be the thing we've been missing for the last 3 years. And we've been trying to just get out of the AFC and make it to Josh Allen's first Super Bowl. Number 2 is James Cook. James Cook, I mean, Chris, motivation. Motivation is always an interesting topic when it comes to athletes because I feel like not everybody's motivated by the same thing. Some guys want to be winners and they want to be champions. One of my favorite stories about this is Marcel Darius. Marcel Darius, when they sat down and they did, every GMs in retrospect, once they were doing a moratorium on what his NFL career turned into, he went on record and said, he told people, they were like, what's your dream? And a lot of guys will tell you, I want to be the best. I want to be a champion. I want to be a Hall of Famer. His thing was he wanted to get enough money to put his family back together. And so for those of you, I won't bore you with all the details because I know I've gotten drunk and talked about it a dozen times.
And cried.
His family got split up when he was a young child. He was raised by his coach's family. And ultimately, once he had amassed some wealth, hired people to go find his family members. And then he bought a giant house and moved his family in with him so that they could be a family again. That's the type of stuff they make Hallmark movies about. Now, he got stoned and did it wearing a boat captain's hat, which is highly regrettable. But he didn't care. He didn't care. He turned it off. He turned the switch on when he hit the NFL and was a monster. And then he turned the switch off once he got what he came for. The question for James Cook is going to come down to motivation. What is your motivation? Is it to go out there and prove that you are one of the best running backs in the NFL and that you deserve a monster contract extension? Is it, I want to be a Super Bowl champion and I want to be a good teammate and I want to be a part of what could be one of the coolest things to happen to a city in the United States ever? They'll put pictures of me on murals in the city for the rest of my life if I help make something special happen here. I don't know what his motivation is. The question is, can he and the team find a way to blend each of their motivations for each other together to continue allowing him to be, Chris, what is one of the better running backs in the NFL? If they can find a way to do that, I think he can be special this year, especially with the depth that we have on the offensive line, the schedule that we have. Like, he's got to come out hungry. And I have no doubt that he will. It's just, how far are you willing to take that?
Yeah, I totally expect him to, I guess, be a hold in. I'm assuming he'll be at camp.
Gone on record saying I think he should.
I just look at somebody like a Le'Veon Bell and how him missing all that time fucked his career up. And I think James Cook takes a look at that and says, I can't have that. And then, not to mention, you got your older brother who was a very good NFL running back for a period of time with Minnesota. So I'm sure Dalvin Cook is giving him pointers on what to do and how to act if you want to get that money.
Here's what I'll say. Just to touch on two things you just said. One, you're looking at this, you have an overly simplistic view of what motivates people, I think. And I think that you don't understand what having an ego is. I know that about you. You don't have, like I have an ego.
You do.
And it's hilarious because a lot of the times it's apropos of nothing. It's absolutely apropos of nothing. But
like if you and I had to go out separately into the world and promote this podcast, the way you would do it would be Chris Farley and Black Sheep in the parking lot, where you do fucking cartwheels and then you do a little dance and be like, hey, listen to the Rockpile Report. Now vote for Donnelly. That would be you. And then you'd get your ties stuck in the, in the trunk. And then you get dragged across a parking lot. I would sell it more like David Spade in that movie.
Oh, my God. You're talking about a guy, Chris, who has back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons in a league that doesn't really have a ton of those anymore. Like, there was a day where that was common to be, hey, I had 1,000 yards. Hey, I had 1,000 yards. You don't run into it because teams platoon too much. Teams throw too much. It's hard to be a consistent 1,000-yard running back now. And the guys who do it get paid. So if you have an ego, you say to yourself, I am that guy. I've done the thing. I scored 16 fucking touchdowns. What else do I have to do? It's hard to stay motivated when you feel like you've accomplished, like people in their day-to-day lives, those of you at home listening to this podcast, probably have had this professionally happen to you before, where you've accomplished everything at the highest level you think you possibly can, and your employer doesn't act like they appreciate that enough to satisfy your ego. That can cause friction. That becomes highly problematic. You can't as a franchise, do that with your best skill player. I'm saying that with all the talent that we're going to put on the field on Sundays, your best skill player is still James Cook. And James Cook is one, that's why he's number 2 in my mind. He's one of the most important pieces of what happens here for us in 2025. Because if they can find a way to keep him motivated and replicate last season's success, 1,000 yards, double-digit touchdowns, whether it's because he's motivated to just stick it up the Bills' tailpipe and I'm going to go hit free agency and I'm going to get Saquon Barkley money and you guys are going to look like idiots when I'm killing it somewhere else. Fine, let that be your motivation. If your motivation is, I'm going to prove to Brandon Beane that he needs to keep me here in Buffalo forever. Okay, let that be your motivation. But I need him motivated. I need him motivated. I can't see the T. Higgins approach. I can't have him taking games off because, hey, that toe's a little sore. I'm making business decisions now. How the team figures out how to navigate that with him is going to be fascinating to me. And then obviously, number 1 with a bullet, Joshua MVP Allen. I know you started this. You're like, you can't include him because it's low-hanging fruit.
It is.
Do you know how many, think about how many years we've been in the stands at games chanting after he'd do something that you knew was going to be repeated on ESPN later that night, and the whole stadium's just chanting MVP, MVP, MVP. And now he finally has one. He is the MVP. Now we can call him that, and it's real. He has the hardware probably at home on a shelf. First of all, I don't know what makes that better. The fact that it cements him into the annals of NFL history, or that it broke the minds of Ravens and Bengals fans and just sent them off into a fucking tizzy. I love it either way. I think it's hilarious. I think every day I open Twitter and I see some Ravens fan trying to make a stupid point about Josh Allen?
Yes.
And I see Bills fans just fighting with them. You're all idiots, but I love you. I love you. You entertain me endlessly. It's very stupid. The conversation is dumb. If you ask Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen themselves, they would go, oh, I don't give a shit. I don't care. None of this, that doesn't matter to me. Because both of them are trying to win a Super Bowl. Right?
Mm-hmm.
The MVP award is nice, but people who are like I heard someone at work say, I thought Josh would give a longer speech, considering it's the MVP. You should be excited to get it. I go, yeah, I'm sure he was excited, but also it's not a Super Bowl. And if you're that good and playing at that level, if it's not a Super Bowl, it doesn't really hit the same, right?
Yeah.
So with that said, I don't know. People have made headlines talking about how he could repeat as MVP when you combine our schedule, the state of our offensive personnel rooms, and just the quality of our offensive coordinator. They're like, Josh could potentially repeat as league MVP. Did you know, Chris, that since the NFL-AFL merger, only 7 times has a league MVP won the Super Bowl in the same year that they won the MVP?
Yeah, I know that doesn't happen often.
Bart Starr, Terry Bradshaw, Joe Montana, Emmitt Smith. Emmitt Smith is the only non-quarterback. Steve Young, Kurt Warner, Patrick Mahomes. That's how hard it is to do that in what that was in 1970. Where are we now? Chris, I'm dumb. What's the math on that? How many years since the merger? We're in 2025.
30 and 25. Is that 55 years?
55 years, 7 guys have done it. And then if you think about the list of MVPs who won the award and then went on to win a Super Bowl later, there's only 6 more guys. The list of MVPs that have Lombardi trophies and Super Bowl rings is only 13 people. It's easy to look at a good team where everybody knows that you're the guy, you're the man, you're one of the league's best players, you're doing all the heavy lifting, and you deserve an award for that. But teams that flow through a single guy, by and large, don't win titles. And that's the problem with the Buffalo Bills being so reliant on Josh all these years. We talk about how he's like Thanos. He's inevitable. He shows up and he just destroys teams. And then even when you think you have him pinned down, like that Rams game, the Rams probably thought, they're like, all right, we have the Bills buried in a hole. And then, holy shit, here comes the Bills just firing, and all of a sudden they have the lead. It's like, what happened here? When you look at the lack of star power this roster has, he's going to once again have to be that guy. And he's going to have to continue to be that outlier he's been throughout his entire career thus far. And you look at some of the absurd stats that exist about him. I bookmarked a couple things the other day because I couldn't wrap my head around where he stands in terms of overall statistics. You know, if you want to talk about just his production overall, like, where's this one here? They talked about Josh Allen and his rushing, and it was, here we go. Josh Allen has 65 rushing touchdowns through the first seven seasons of his career. Their career leader in rushing touchdowns for the Jets is Hall of Famer Curtis Martin, and he has 58 over 8 seasons. Curtis Martin didn't score touchdowns the way Josh Allen scores touchdowns. Also, he's 5 passing touchdowns away from being the first player in NFL history with 200 plus passing touchdowns and 50 or more in their career.
50 rushing.
Yep. He'll
Impressive.
have that by what? Week 4?
Yeah, week 3. Was it, you said 5 touchdowns?
Yep.
Yeah, I think week 2 or 3.
It's insanity how much of an outlier this guy is. And unfortunately, he's going to have to keep doing it. He's going to have to continue to be this gross statistical outlier because the 2025 Buffalo Bills need that. It's not fair, but them's the breaks. And that's why he's the most important player, Chris. And even though it's like, Chris, I feel like, again, it might be lazy to point to him as number 1, but when you look at it through that context, it almost seems impossible, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I offered up the idea of doing a top 10, but not including Allen, because we all know that he's in the number 1 spot. It would have been...
Those MVP statistics are damning.
Yeah.
There's only been 13 guys to ever win a title who also won an MVP trophy. Let's go. Let's fucking do it. Let's see if he can join that group of 6. Let's see if 2025 is the year. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you agree, disagree? Who do you think I omitted from the top 10? Let us know at Rockpile Report on social media. If you're not into that thing, therockpilereport@gmail.com.
Or leave a comment down below.
Guys, this has been a lot of fun. But for tonight, we got to get the hell out of here. I'm Drew Gear. That's Chris Kruger. This has been your Rockpile Report.